Richard. How you doing? What?
I went away for 2 weeks.
Where'd you go?
I went to Palm Beach
Oh, Lordy.
and Charleston.
I talked to Robin Dial. Robin Dial was down there.
Robin lives there.
I know. Did you see?
I just talked to him
Did
today.
you? Yeah.
No, I didn't have his number, so I'm gonna the next time I go down,
Yeah.
and we're gonna get together. I was telling him about Russ. I grew up there.
I know.
I know where he lives.
Yeah.
I know exactly where he lives. So I said, well, next time we got to get together.
Absolutely.
He said, yeah, he comes back in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Then he goes
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
I think, in
Then he goes to the
November.
mountains.
Yeah, I
It's
said,
over.
Robin. Slow. I said, Robin, I'm going to raise his chair.
It doesn't look like it's bothering Josh too bad. Josh is good. I had to trade mine out.
Got all sorts of notes tonight.
Yeah, but Craig, to answer your question, I think that Don Rawls has done most of the survey
Okay,
work
we'll
out
go
there.
there.
Yeah, yes, if I had to bet, it's probably gonna go through him because, just for the obvious reason, he has so much history on, on all the other stuff. So,
I guess we can.
yeah, it's always a procedural. Craig, what do you repeat yourself from? What is that?
No, I'm sorry.
Ready? Good afternoon. We will call to order the March 2016 City of Columbia Planning Commission meeting. Welcome to the Planning Commission members, staff, and guests. I would like to ask that everyone turn their cell phones and PDAs to the silent or vibrate mode. The clerk will now proceed with the roll call.
Mr. Cohn,
Here?
Mr. Dinkins,
Here.
Ms. James,
Here.
Mr. McDuffie,
Here.
Mr. Stern,
Here.
Mr. Stigemeyer,
Here.
Mr. Taylor, and Mr. Waits.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to briefly review the meeting format. Applicants with requests before the Planning Commission are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time should include, but is not limited to, an overview of the project, case history, and any pertinent meetings held regarding the request. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant, such as attorneys, engineers, and architects. This time limit does not include any questions asked by Planning Commissioner staff regarding requests. Members of the general public are given the opportunity to address their concerns in intervals of 2 minutes. The clerk has a timer and will make presenters aware of when their time has expired. The Planning Commission reserves the right to amend these procedures on a case-by-case basis. The Planning Commission uses the consent agenda to approve non-controversial or routine matters by a single motion and vote. Examples of such items shall include approval of site plans, annexations, and street names. If a member of the Planning Commission or the general public would like to discuss an item on the consent agenda, that item is removed from the consent agenda and considered during the meeting. The Planning Commission then approves the remaining consent agenda items. The clerk will now read the consent agenda, and we have an interesting consent agenda tonight.
So the consent agenda consists of item number 1, which is the February 1st, 2016 minutes. There was an error in the header of that, but staff will correct that as to the location. Item number 2, which is the annexation and interim comprehensive plan map amendments and interim zoning map amendments for west-south National Guard Road, east-south Congaree River, and south of South Stadium Road, southeast of Vine Street. Item number 3, the applicant has requested to defer that item to the April Planning Commission meeting. And then we have a annexation and comprehensive plan map amendment and zoning map amendment for 825 Abernathy Street and 7660 Garner's Ferry. And then item number 5, which was a zoning map amendment, that item has been withdrawn. And then your final item for the consent agenda consists of 1634 Main Street, which is a zoning map and text amendment.
Thank you. We're going to ask for several motions tonight since we have some recusals as well. So I'd like to ask for a motion on number 1 and number 6.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we approve items 1 and 6, February minutes, and the matter regarding 1634 Main Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 1 and 6 are approved. All right, now we're going to go to number 2. And number 4, John, is that how we were going to do that, or just 2? Separately?
2 and 3.
3 is deferred. Just
3 is
2?
deferred, so you'd have 2 and
4.
4 left over. And you have 2 different recusals for those, so
So we'll do them
you'll do individually, yes.
All right, so can I get a motion to approve item number 2?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 2 is the West-South National Guard Road, East-South Congaree River, and South Stadium Road, southeast of Vine Street.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Number 2 is approved. Now we will go to item number 4. I'd like to get a motion to approve item number 4.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we approve item number 4.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Item number 4 is approved.
And just for the record, Mr. Dinkins deferred on item number 2, and Mr. Waits, recused himself, and Mr. Waits recused himself on item number 4.
We will now proceed with the regular agenda.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, how about item 6?
We approved it
Okay.
previously.
Item number 7 is 1829 and 1859 and 1863 West Buchanan Drive. It is a zoning map amendment. And did you have anything to say? It's a rezoning from RS1 in FP, which is the floodplain area, to RS2 FP. And I believe the applicant is here if you have any questions.
Any commission members have questions for staff?
Yeah, the first question I have, I guess, Brian, this would be a question for you. So is this not achievable underneath the current RS1 zoning of the parcels? Is it a minimum width thing, or?
Or I believe the intention, the applicant, correct me if I'm wrong, of this rezoning request would be to a zoning district that would permit the potential for the subdivision, meaning minimum lot area, specifically speaking, as you know, going from, district to district, there are different minimum lot area requires different setbacks, minimum lot width, lot coverages. So, and the applicant can speak to this if board so chooses, but I believe that is the reason why.
What was your reason for denial? Again, I'm sorry.
Generally speaking, as you can look at the map, there is a good swath as we look at that particular section that remains RS1. That and based on the future land use designation, staff felt comfortable with the zoning remaining the same.
Okay. Are there any guests who would like to come up and speak to the commission? Can include the applicant. If you'll please state your name.
My name's John Blackman. Used to serve with Mr. Dinkins' father on the great board of Planning Commission for Columbia. I'm representing Carol Marshall, who owns 1859, and Harry Smithson and his wife, who own 1863 West Buchanan. And oddly enough, the lot that's fronting on Beltline is known as 1829 West Buchanan for some reason. If y'all had the opportunity to ride down Belmont and see the condition of that back lot, it is not buildable at all. Both houses got flooded out. The city's requirement or threshold for or cap for improvements is not feasible for them. So they would like to develop it into 3 lots facing West Buchanan, 68 feet wide, 68 feet wide, and 70 feet wide. We had also planned for an easement on that back parcel so that the 2 interior lots could be gotten to from Belmont.
Say that one more time again. So there's going to be some sort of an access easement reserved over the... so you said it one time?
On the back lot,
Back lot.
the one off of Belmont.
So what's current...
Was currently a swamp.
On which lot?
Okay. I guess I was a little bit...
Tax map number 30.
So
Okay.
on the back lot as currently existing?
Yeah, it currently
Okay,
existing, right.
Okay. So that whole thing would be an easement?
Well, not the whole thing, but
Okay, just some
Enough
sort
to-
of...
to get to the 2 interior lots.
How does the redesign of the lots change the situation with the redevelopment of the homes?
The
regard to
height,
the
the
city.
height of the construction. And Columbia's not ready for a tree house, I don't think. And that's about all you can put on this back lot. So we're trading 3 lots for 3 lots.
So, correct,
So one of these lots, the back lot's not developable at all?
It is, because we're going to take 3 lots and make 3 lots out of them.
But in the current configuration, the back lot is essentially unbuildable. In the current configuration.
I wouldn't, again, unless it's a tree house.
I know a little something about this area. I think the thing here is, if reconfiguring these 3 lots into 3 lots, as shown in this configuration, gets the potential buildable area further away from the creek. Is that right?
Correct.
So that's what we're doing here, because you've got all of these lots are located entirely within a 100-year flood zone. So you're going to have the same building regulation regardless of how the lots are configured, but this practically pushes you further from the creek.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Blackman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to come up?
This is the first opportunity I've had to meet Mr. Blackman, but he's here to speak for me. I still own 1863. We bought the house in 1986. The house was appraised at around $270,000 when the flood came in. We received a $39,000 check from the flood insurance, so we've suffered about a $240,000 loss, and Mr. Blackman's efforts to rezone the property, I think, will certainly help us recoup what amounts to a $200-something thousand loss on the property. And as I understand it, the plan is to put 3 homes closer to the road. That area in back there is undevelopable. It's basically a swamp. We've actually had flooding in the property before October the 4th a couple of times. So we certainly would appreciate the council's reconsideration of rezoning this, because it's certainly going to, without your doing that, I think it's virtually impossible for us to sell the property, because the homes as they are now are, they're basically shell homes. We had 5 feet of water through the house, and it's basically a ghost house now. So that we certainly appreciate your willingness to consider changing the zoning so that 3 homes can be built on the property and thereby increase our chances of selling the property.
Any questions?
Yeah, and I'm sorry for asking the questions, but, so there is not a home on, are there 3 homes on the 3 parcels as they exist right now?
No, there's 2 homes. Actually, the doctor who bought the property in 1960 bought the house to the west, on the western end of Buchanan, on those 2 lots. And he bought all the lots at one time, and as the property evolved, our lot on the corner was separated from the other lots over 50 years of sales. But it's basically, we have an arrangement with our neighbor to go into trying to sell both lots, because both his home and mine was condemned. And there's only 2 houses on the property on that all, but they actually own the lot. I own the house right on the corner of Belmont and Buchanan.
Right.
And they own the house next to us, and there's no development whatsoever behind either of the 2 houses, both of which were swamped 5 feet through the house, and basically, we've been told by all realtors, there's no chance. First of all, the house, it would cost us $40,000 to lift the houses, and then you'd have to resell them, because we had to strip them out after the flooding. So they're basically shell homes of no value as they stand now.
So your intent would be to sell the remaining, I guess, the 3rd lot to recoup some of your losses? And somebody else would
We have
build
sort
on
of an unofficial arrangement with our neighbor to go in together on this, and since they own most of the property, the arrangement would be for them to get most of the proceeds. But we really have to sell it as one package, because no one's going to be interested in buying his lot unless ours goes along with it. But we have suffered a major loss, and I don't think we're going to be able to recoup anything without this zoning change to allow 3 properties to be built on it. I mean, that would certainly increase our chances of.
So as outlined on the drawing, there's 2 houses and 1 vacant lot in the back, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you've got to tear those down, the 2 existing houses?
Anyone who purchases the property is going to have to bulldoze the homes. I mean, they're of no value as they are. They're stripped bare, and we've been told that even though they were state-of-the-art in 1960, the bathrooms are small by today's standards for that neighborhood, so there's no way to sell the properties in the condition they're in now. So I think whoever buys the property is going to have to bulldoze the homes. That would be ultimately the decision of the purchaser who purchases it, but I think that's the design, that's the purpose in trying to get the zoning change. And if they get the zoning change, those structures as they are not going to be able to be there.
The flood, will FEMA let you rebuild the house? They're going to make you tear down the houses and raise them, is that correct?
I haven't heard anything from FEMA or the city about whether that area is in a condemned. It is.
He needs to be on the microphone.
But all I know is before October 4th, we had water in the house a couple of times, 6 inches through the house. We've had a chronic flooding problem underneath the house, 6 inches in the house one time in 1997. So, but, I don't think after what happened October 4th, I don't see how the property would be sold.
The cost of raising the houses in addition to refurbishing them.
Or bulldozing it and building it higher? is that-
Right.
Okay.
And I talked earlier with Lynn Ross, with Russell and Jeffcoat, and Lynn lives up the street. And his thought was it should be very reasonable to be able to put a $500,000 house there. even with a 68-foot wide lot, and it would be good for the neighborhood.
Okay.
I
Ma'am,
have a question of staff real quick.
Sure.
Will you remind me of the differences between the Urban Edge Residential 1 and the Urban Edge Residential 2? I know the 2 is larger lots, is 1 smaller, intended for smaller lots?
yes, the 2 is the larger lots like you see north of Buchanan, and then the UER 1 is this lot smaller. I don't have the size just off the top of my head, but essentially what you would end up seeing here on this map is that pattern of the UER 1 would actually, cross that center line of the street. I also wanted to just mention the survey that was handed out to you at the beginning of the meeting. It was prepared last Friday, and this is the first time staff has actually seen it. So the request and the evaluation that you have before you is based on just a pure rezoning from the one district to the other district. So that's really you're not really, I just want to make sure you don't think you're approving this particular exhibit as a plat. They could certainly come in with slightly different property lines. They could, and plus Brian hasn't actually evaluated to make sure it actually meets that proposed zoning, so,
Does it change your recommendation after seeing it?
no.
Okay.
I'll just add two, if, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right. The basic difference between RS1, minimum lot area in RS1 is 15,000 square feet. Setbacks are 35 feet in the front, 15 in the rear, 8 on the side. Minimum lot width is 90 feet. Percentage of maximum lot coverage is 30%, as opposed to RS2, minimum lot area 8,500 square feet. Setback 25 front, 10 rear, 5 side. Minimum lot width of 60 feet, and maximum lot coverage of 30%.
I don't have a question. I was just going to say to you guys that when I look at something like this, it seems like something where people are trying to maximize land when you're not going to be able to use the back parcel regardless here. So in order to not be able to use that parcel, they're trying to compensate in the front. And at the end of the day, you still have 3 lots, and I don't see a problem with it. I mean, just my take on it.
And if we just divided it into the front 2 lots, we would still have 10,000 square feet. The left lot, which is the smallest lot, has over 13,000 square feet of land area. Whether part of it be that back, not necessarily usable, but it's still a big lot.
Yes, sir.
If we were to approve the rezoning, and I understand since we're not approving this plat, is it conceivable that the new zoning would allow for 4 lots or 5 lots as opposed to 3?
4.
It would allow.
One would be on Belmont, and it would have to be that tree house. And again, I don't think Columbia's ready for tree houses.
And also, I mean, not to reiterate the obvious, but it is, that's floodplain issues that pretty much brought us here today. We're talking about adding, potentially more lots.
I have a question for staff. Have we heard anything from the neighbors about, have you guys heard any feedback from the neighbors? Oh, we've got someone in the audience that hasn't spoken yet. Okay, great.
Have not. Except maybe people behind me.
Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and talk about this? You can come up to the mic and state your name, please.
Talking about the swamp behind his house.
If you'd state your name, please.
I'm Bruce Walker. I live at 1823 Belmont Drive, just up the street from him, and I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for what he and his wife have been through. I've seen him run out of his house a number of times by floods. So that whole swampy area back there, we have fought together. Forest Acres is zoned that residential, and they may clear cut a lot of it, which would exacerbate the issues. But I think there's a misconception in the neighborhood, and I just got an email the other day, but the assumption was that it was to be rezoned to where you could build duplexes there. So it sounds like what they're trying to do is, we have a problem with more duplexes and multifamily. I think the neighbors, if they understood what was going on, might not have an issue if this was going to be, the neighborhood's pretty high end along Buchanan. And if it was single family and 3 units were put down there, I don't know that the neighbors would oppose it that much. I mean, I could go back and poll them. But I think there was a misunderstanding. Emails were going out that it was going to be zoned for duplexes, the houses torn down or converted to duplexes.
Well, it appears, correct me, staff, if I'm wrong, they could build duplexes there, am I right? Or not?
They could not build duplexes in RS1 or RS2.
Okay.
There is a potential, with a special exception from the Board of Zoning Appeals for group development, that meets the requirements for group development, but that would be a long shot.
Okay.
So I think, and I'll check with but I think that was their main concern, was that we were going to increase the density down there where, you know, perhaps we don't want to increase density, but if there were single-family homes on one lot, I will check and I will carry back the information to the neighborhood as to what the intent is.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions to staff from the I'm sorry.
My name is Linda Crimmins, and I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association. It's the Historic Trenham Buchanan Neighborhood Association, which comprises all of the area on the map there that lies within the city of Columbia. This came to our attention very late, so it was really not possible to get a feel for how the neighbors felt about it, the neighbors being the greater area there. However, speaking for them, I think I could say that we would have no objection to what sounds to me like taking that area and changing the configuration of 3 lots from what they look like now to 3 lots in some other shape. We have I don't think anyone would have an objection to that, and we certainly know Mr. Smithson, thank you, and know what he has been through, not only in the October flood, but in heavy rainstorms before that. And our concern, of course, lies more with the development of the children's home property, which lies in the back, and the extension of Belmont Drive, which the city has already approved without us really having any input. So the Belmont Drive actually will run along the side of those lots, which it does now, but will continue back to serve as an entrance and an exit from the property that's being developed in Forest Acres. So because so little lies in Columbia, we feel we've never really had a say in what's going on and what will affect our neighborhood. But as far as these 3 lots, if that's all it is, and they can promise us that that's all it is, that 3 lots are going to be, you know, put on that acreage there and just reconfigured, then I don't think anybody in our neighborhood would have an objection. And certainly, they need to find some way to help Mr. Smithson and his neighbor out of the flooding situation that is really bad in that corner of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
That back lot that's back there, I knew the people that live in the other house to the left of the Smithsons, and I spent a great deal of time on their back porch, was overlooking this property, and one of our biggest concerns is it is swamp, hardwoods. But if you look at how those 3 plats are laid out, it really makes for the backyard. Nobody would clear the trees back there. On the other side of that creek, it's all commercial, the Beltline development, but it makes for a very nice backyard, and it would be very desirable to have it, even though it is rather swampy. It's gorgeous property back there. So, and I didn't realize you were here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just reiterate that this rezoning, if approved, of course, we would not be approving this plat, and it could be configured in some other way. Not saying that it will be, but just for the record, say if, you know, somebody else came in with a different plat and it meets the standards of RS1 or RS2, of course, staff would have to approve it.
And that's right, Brian, because this is not even a plat, this is a sketch. So this is not even based on field work.
Yes, correct.
And let me ask a further question, but I did hear correctly, 60 foot is the minimum width, correct?
UER2.
Yes,
In R2, yeah.
Oh,
for RS2,
Yeah.
Correct.
It's 80 foot in the other, and it's 60 here, correct?
90 and currently 60 proposed.
So short of doing 3 lots along Buchanan and 1 on Belmont, there's really no other opportunity to do 4 lots, because you don't have enough width on Belmont to do 4 that way. It's only going to be 3 one way or 3 the other without a lot along the back of Belmont. Correct? Okay.
And since this isn't a plat, we can't really approve it showing that this is how,
This is one of those situations, I think, we had one a couple years ago where there was a residential house 2 blocks from, or about a block from a major arterial. The request was rezone it to commercial so that somebody could have a law firm, but we had the discussion of, but when you rezone it to that particular classification, any of those types of uses could happen. So even though they were petitioning to rezone it, they could actually sell the land to somebody else and they could open up one of those other uses. So this is sort of in that same similarity. Once it's rezoned to RS2, there is the potential that it could be divided similar to what you have in front of you. It could be, it could be a 60-foot lot on the corner and a 70-foot lot farther west. It could have 4 lots. And so, and the way the plat works is, in these districts, the plat would come to staff as long as it meets the technical requirements, it would be approved. So there is no, staff cannot sit here and guarantee you that it's only going to be 3 lots or that those particular widths are going to be there, because after somebody actually does do some surveying and a plot, they may come in very well with something slightly different, and it would not be coming back to this board for approval. So your decision is based upon, is RS2 zoning, knowing that you can, with that acreage, you can get about 4 lots. It could be configured various ways with, 1 on Buchanan, 3 on Belmont, or 1 on Belmont and 3 on Buchanan, or something like that, those are the possibilities. And if you're fine with all those possibilities, then that kind of might direct you. If for some reason you are hesitant, or you are more looking at the land use plan where, it's definitely UER2 north of Buchanan and UER1, so you basically have these larger lots. And so, staff's recommendation was sort of to maintain the existing character of the neighborhood with these larger lots on the north side of Buchanan. But those are all the things that, you kind of have to juggle.
I see their issue, and I'd like to help them. But I don't want to hurt the neighborhood, as we've heard spoken, with something that comes out that's not what we see here. So we can't put any restrictions on that zoning.
No, you can't. So that's if you're knowing the potential of maximum probably of 4 lots, if you're fine with that, then that's something that you and the neighborhood should be aware of, that there could be 4 lots there, or it could be exactly what they're proposing with 3 lots.
Do we know if any of this is in the floodway at this point?
I think it's all in the floodplain.
It's all in the
100-year
floodplain, none in the floodway.
I think, at least as I try to work through the information, outside of the reduction in width of the lots and the density of those lots, that's really the only change between RS1 and RS2. It's not like they have additional permitted uses, as I look at this. That would not have to go to BOZA, of course. It's a special exception.
Right, the bulk requirements are just slightly different setbacks,
Yeah.
Lot width.
So
things
we're
that you-
generally a 3-lot to a 4-lot conversation when this thing really all boils down. And the question is, would you want to put that last lot against the most heavily flooded area, if that's even a reasonable thing to do?
Right.
And you can make your own judgment there.
And, there's always the wild card of a group development, but you're not going to get much in there anyway. That would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for additional review.
Okay.
As you drive down Buchanan, what would happen is you'd have these homes that are set back a little bit farther, and then when you get to those future new lots facing Buchanan, there's the potential the buildings would be closer to the street. That's probably what you would notice if you walked or drove down the street.
Can I ask a question of what other homes are affected down there at the bottom of Belmont? I mean, I've driven down there, and it's, the cul-de-sac down there at the end is pretty washed away. What are the other homes that,
There are duplexes across Belmont from our property there. The northernmost, closest to the creek duplex on Belmont has incurred some flooding. And actually, the second duplex up on Belmont towards Buchanan also had flooding in the house. To my knowledge, other than my neighbor on Buchanan to the west of my lot, there are no other homes on Buchanan that have actually suffered flooding in the house itself. And of course, as you go up Belmont, it's like a steep climb, which is why this gentleman was nice enough to let me park my vehicles there that Saturday night, because I didn't lose my vehicles. I couldn't talk my neighbors on Belmont and the duplexes to move their cars. And so they said, I guess you're going to say I told you so on Monday, because all their cars were completely flooded. But to answer your question, there's no flooding other than the two homes on Buchanan and the duplex areas across the street.
So it would either be a 3-lot, most likely 2, or 4. That would be the most that could be put on there, am I correct?
I think 4 would be an adventure. I mean, it would be crazy. I think someone would try to build behind our house, which is what Mr. Blackman was saying. That, I mean, that's the area that's even more flooded than our home as you come up from the creek. So that would be an adventure
And
to
if
build a home
you
there.
go look at that lot back there, you'll see how mud will dry on leaves. That's what you see back there, year round.
You know, I subdivide property for a living, so I'm very familiar with this sort of stuff.
And I have a question for staff. The difference in the front setbacks in RS1 and RS2?
RS1 front setbacks 35 feet. RS2 front setback 25 feet. Yes.
I think practically speaking, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to subdivide this into more than 3 parcels.
Yep.
So what it boils down to, in my opinion here, is currently we've got 3 parcels. We've got one of them located way too close to a creek for anyone to feasibly build a home. So if we do this and we rezone this property, practically speaking, we're keeping the same number of parcels, but we're better configuring them for someone to potentially do something or not do something. But even if you don't do anything, you still have 3 better lots than we're sitting right now. So that sways me.
No, Gene, I agree.
Regarding-
I think it enhances the neighborhood. I think you're maximizing the property, and I think there's very little unknowns here
You know,
that
we've
possibly
shied
pop
away
up.
from the commercial intrusion into our neighborhoods
I
for
agree.
obvious reasons, but I see this upzoning as it is in a slightly different regard as some of these others, and I think that's why we come in here and talk about them.
I think
I agree.
also you're in a situation where you're going to have either, you know, two shell houses or 2 derelict buildings, and versus potentially having, you know, up to 3, you know, functional, you know, houses that are being lived in, which would also be a huge benefit for the neighborhood. So.
I would say additionally, it's pretty refreshing to have a neighborhood come in, and additionally, the president of the homeowners to come in and speak favorably upon it, you know, so it's not a problem either, which is pretty rare.
It's new for us.
It is.
Approach the stand. Yes, sir. Podium.
Again, like I said, there's confusion in the neighborhood. So as you see right there where the 3 duplexes are on the right, it's zone RS2, and that's what the request is to change the zone to RS2. So I'm a little confused as to whether you're saying that it would not be possible to put duplexes on the property.
Well, it would have to
Because
go
if once a
to a-
developer buys it, he'll do whatever he can do. and
It would
get
have to go to
more
a special exception. Am I right? No?
No, duplex is not a permitted use in the RS2 district. The ones that we're talking about, they've been there for some time, I'm assuming, it's probably pre.
They were built in 1950 to 1955.
Right, so they're pre-existing, just non-conforming based on our current ordinance. So if you came in today and want to do the same thing, you would not be able to build those new.
Right.
Okay. I don't think that's their intent. It's the developer that ends up.
You can't do it. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to discuss this with the commission?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, I'll call for a motion, please.
Motion to approve the proposal to rezone parcels from RS1 to RS2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, the last item, which was number 8, which is a site plan review, that was deferred to April, the April agenda. And I also would like to request a clarification motion for item number 4. If you look at your agenda and you look at your staff evaluation, the actual evaluation was for Abernathy was to rezone or annex and zone to the RG2 zoning classification, and there appears to be a typo on the agenda, which was to C3. So the request was to rezone to the RG2 general residential district.
Kind of a big difference.
Can we amend it? Amend the motion?
If you could either, yeah, if you, well, you can, yes, if you could pick it up and amend it and then restate for the record that it's actually rezoning. I believe the motion just said to rezone. I don't know if it was specific, but if we could make it specific, that would be very helpful for the record.
Can I get someone to restate that with a motion for number 4?
And I can tell you who made the motion, if that helps. It was Mr. Dinkins made the motion, and Mr. McDuffie actually seconded it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to correct our previous motion that we annex, excuse me, that we annex and assign the land use classification AC2 and assign a temporary zoning of, remind me of it, John,
It was RG2.
RG2, as it's mistakenly written as C3, so, good catch.
Mr. McDuffie?
I'll
would you
second, I'll re-second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is approved.
And then I have one extra item. We, as you know, we are down one planning commission member, and city council last month actually made a motion to recommend a new commissioner. And so Ernest Cromartie will be joining us next month. He'll be sitting right up there with all of you, but he's here observing this evening. So after the meeting, if you want to welcome him and find out a little bit about him, he's served on other boards and commissions in the city for a number of years. So he'll bring a lot of experience from other perspectives.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Welcome, Ernest. If there's no other business, I'll call to a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second?
Meeting adjourned.